Life is forever changing, and what makes life worth living is adjusting to whatever changes or whatever comes our way. And as long as you're open to the shift or the ties that bind, you'll be open to a wonderful life. Today, we have John Previti, an amazing school teacher, gifted craftsman, and first-time author with his new book, The Object. Today, John will be sharing his life's journey on how his life's experience led him to write a book. He will walk you through the motivation behind the book, The Object. We will talk about the lonely art of writing, the risk one takes to enter a space of writing in a genre called science fiction. And if you stay around long enough, and if you ever ask yourself, I've always wanted to write a book, or how do I write a book? Maybe John will show you the writing process or what he used to write a book. Maybe John will share with you how to go about getting published. And maybe John will share with you his marketing strategy on how to market his book. So welcome to another episode of Talking with Kevin and Son and the People You Should Know. Hi, my name is Kevin McLemore. I am your show host. The mission is through our story, we want to uplift our voices, share the experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple. We want to create hope, helping other people every day. This format is for people that are unsung heroes. John Previti, he's a first-time author, wonderful, wonderful human being. You got to get to know him. I hope you love him as much as I do. So John Previti, welcome to Talking with Kevin and Son. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. A pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you for writing such a wonderful book. I want to go ahead and to our listeners and let you know that if you want to get this book, you can get it on Amazon and on Kindle. Soon it's probably going to be on Audible. But before we go on, we want to get to know John, where he came from, long before he became a school teacher, long before he became a master craftsman and a furniture builder, and long before this book, The Object. So, John, if you don't mind taking us back a little bit on Little John, how you got started.
Sure, happy to do that. I'm from the Philadelphia area, grew up outside of Philadelphia. My dad was from Philadelphia, went to Girard College, home for fatherless boys. My mother was from upstate in the coal regions. So that's my parents' background. I had a brother and sister growing up. One was 10 years older than me. One was 7 years older than me. I was the baby of the family that kind of was forgotten about and let run wild. So probably, I guess when I was 13 or 14, one of the things I took up was reading science fiction. My father was a World War II vet, and he always was very interested in history and sports. And so he passed that along to me. And my older brother was the wild one with the motorcycles and the cars and the Rat Fink magazines and hiding underneath his souped up car in the driveway with his feet hanging out and the girls chasing him around while he hid underneath his car. So I used to sit and watch him and have him, used to try and help him with his car stuff. So that was kind of the background for me. Always had these strange comics for car magazines and things like that. But always liked adventure. And it started out as adventure in military history, that kind of thing, various history stories. And I can't say exactly how I gravitated to science fiction, but I always was very interested in science and how technology was advancing, the human condition. And of course, growing up in the 60s, there was the space program, the rockets, and all that kind of stuff. And that, I think, led me to try and find stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And that's kind of how I got started.
So you weren't one of these kids that laid in the front yard with his arms behind his head, looked up in the cloud and looked at the designs of the cloud and wondered,
Well,
well,
my teachers always accused me of that, looking out the window too often. Previti, what are you doing? I was, I'm not doing anything. That's right. You're looking out the window. Put your nose in the book. As a kid, I used to build models. I was very good at it. In fact, I did stay, back in the 60s, parents didn't really watch over you. And so we had a crew of kids that wandered around, a very large crew, probably a 20 or so. But I would be inside making models, and my mom would say, John, it's time to go outside. And so she would leave me outside, and then she would close the door behind me and lock it and say, you're out. You have to go outside and do whatever. So I wasn't allowed back in the house until dark.
were you a straight A student, John?
No, I was a good student up until probably junior high. I didn't really apply myself, uh, but I was always very good in English, um, and of course lunch and industrial arts shop classes, which is what I ended up being a teacher. But if I was in class and you had an assigned book, I didn't want to read a book that was assigned to me. I only read what I wanted to read.
All right. A rebel
So
without a cause, right?
pretty much, and following in my brother's footsteps, who used to drag race and hide his trophies in the closet under his clothes.
Now, I'm real curious before I ask the next question, and a lot of my guests do this. Your brother and sister have a name by any chance? Because I know.
My brother was Bill, and my sister is Joan.
All right. I just want to make sure Bill and Joan get the love and let them know that you're recognizing them on a national platform. And the reason why I asked you about if you academically were a straight A student, because a lot of people, and I will be the first to tell you, I love books. I love authors. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of authors don't fit the stereotype. Most people think that academically they were straight A students. They had mastered the gift of the word, and I was able to write like no one else. But many of them were people that had some learning disabilities, but had a story to tell. And with all the genres, you pick science fiction. And for those of you, when I say genres and whatever, every book falls into a category. It's either fiction, nonfiction, romance novels, mysteries, young adult books, historic books, short stories, women fiction. It goes on and on and on. But science fiction is a different genre. Until I read your book, it's my first science fiction book. I was not familiar with that genre. How did you happen to embrace and start to write in that space?
Well, I always read science fiction. I found it very diverting. I like military science fiction, space operas to a great degree, but I read everything. Monsters, it didn't matter, but I like how it was entwined with what could be. And you see it now in the general culture. Science fiction is very, very popular. We've got everybody wants to follow Elon Musk and SpaceX and Bezos and all these things that are happening in space. And I always had a positive view of humanity. I thought the future was in the stars for us, and I was always trying to find that. And read a lot of stories. And finally, what happened was I couldn't find the stories that I liked in the bookstore. And part of it was, as you mentioned earlier, I had a career as a teacher, industrial arts teacher, had a lot of experiences, lasted 20 years, became very good at making furniture and restoring antiques, and decided to go that way and get out of teaching after 20 years. And so I had a client who was a lawyer in Philadelphia, and he asked me to make a copy for him for his big shot desk of the president's desk. And so I did it, and we customized it to the way he liked. He was a railroad attorney, so we carved railroad motifs around the edges, and he liked wolves. So anyway, one day I was at his house, and in it was a box, and his wife was there. And I said, "Well, what's this box of books you've got there? They're all the same." She goes, "Oh, that's my wife's pre-production novel, or my husband's pre-production novel." And I said to her, I said, well, he runs his own business down in the city, and it's a very busy business. How does he have time to write? And she said he just loves it. He spends plunk himself down in front of the TV with her after dinner, and he just writes and writes and writes. And I was stunned. I was like, wow. I always had a book story that I had written in high school, and it was always percolating in my mind. And so when it came to that point where I was like reading stories, and I was like, well, I could write this trash. And little did I know. It's been a long road since then, but that's what got me into it. And then I started just doing it the old fashioned way, writing by hand. And I mentioned this to Kevin before. Once you start it, and you have a story in your head, it just kind of comes out. And that part was really fun. And it was a great discovery to know that, boy, that story can come out like a gusher. And I always wondered about people who said, I don't know how to, I can't write about anything. I sit in front of a screen. And I was like, I don't have that problem yet.
Before we go into that, I want to ask one question, and then I want to know how people can get in touch with you, get your book. Do you by any chance have a copy of your book with you?
I do not have a printed copy of my book, but I have the painted version of the cover behind me.
Okay, all right. I'm not going to ask you to show the painted cover of your book, but next time we do this interview, have the book with you. I will ask. A lot of times we are inspired or motivated by someone that is in the same space that we are. I don't think any of us are original. We're a copy of something. We just make what we do appear to be original. Is there a author or a book that has captured your attention, and motivated you to write in that style, or do you have a style of your own?
If I had to say I write in a style, I try to write in a style. I think a little bit of Alan Dean Foster. He wrote a lot of this follow-on stories for Star Trek, for Alien. He's written a lot of stuff. And then also some of the earlier ones, I just mentioned to you, Samuel R. Delaney. He's one of the most famous science fiction writers, and he happens to be from New York City. And I believe he's living in Philadelphia now. I didn't know that. He's 80. He's Black and he's gay, and he has written many, many stories about his experience in life. And I was just looking at his bio, and he had written many, many different kinds of things. So I haven't written 40 or 50 novels yet, but given enough time, you can attack different genres like he has. So both those two authors I enjoy.
Well, I want to ask you, and I want to segue, and I know people are waiting for us to talk about your book titled The Object. You can get it on Amazon and Kindle right now. We're going to work on the audio version of it, but I'm going to ask you one, leading into your story. It opens up with talking about a school teacher and a transfer student that just happens to be the cat's meow, if I may say that. Okay, it's a distraction to everyone, both male and female in the school. And how did the object come about?
Well, part of it is a distillation of my experiences teaching. There's quite a bit of me in the character Sam. Not all of it, but some. And the main character, Brenda, also is modeled after a real student, too. And as I said, just write a few pages and just set it aside, and came back to it after I'd finished another novel, a first contact novel, aliens landing on Earth. And I thought, well, what if I make this person who is too pretty to be comfortable an alien and an outcast? and and she wants not to be an outcast. She just wants to be loved. And the other person in the story that is, the protagonist is the teacher who is also an outcast and looked down upon by his peers. So the two outcasts join forces, and the story goes on from there. The object is actually a recovered extraterrestrial piece of technology that has an artificial intelligence in it, and it watches over and guards Brenda from trouble or other aliens.
Without giving away too much of the book, the setup leads you into the real world, and then going into that, before you know it, you fade into letting your imagination goes. Like I said, this is the first science fiction book that I've experienced reading. I'm glad it was you, but a lot of people always ask me. I always hear it. I've always wanted to write a book, but I never have time to do it. I've got a book or a story I want to tell, but I don't know how to write a book. John, you're going to get a lot of that. How do you answer that question when someone says, "I've always wanted to write a book," or "I have a story I want to tell, and it's going to make a great book, but I don't know where to start"? How do you start writing a book?
It's a fabulous question. With things that come to mind, or pick something you're passionate about, and narrow it down to a character or two. Create characters that seem real to you, and just let them grow. I am a kind of person that just writes his story. There are other authors that write the whole story as a outline, or they write the ending first, or they write the log line, which is kind of like the sentence describing the story on the back of the book first. But I think it boils down to, you have to be passionate about what you write about. Pick something that's important to you in your life, and or an experience that you've had, and just kind of elaborate on it. And you don't have to write the whole story or know the ending when you start, but just start writing is my only bit of advice. Even if you're writing, in the morning, or where you're sitting somewhere out on a deck where you have a little notebook, just carry it around. Heck, you can, you're sitting in the car, you can write. I work in the workshop, and sometimes a paragraph will strike me, and I will type it in now that I use a computer, but I used to just write it by hand. But one thing I carried with me from high school was I never learned grammar. I hated grammar, and I ended up taking remedial grammar in high school, but I was fabulous at reading stories, and I could write stories. We had a big assignment about in, I guess, 10th or 11th grade. You had to write a big paper, and I wrote a big paper about one of the early pyramids. And I kind of made it novelistic, but it had footnotes. And of course, it came back as a D, great, A plus for story and D for grammar. So that was something I had to learn on the fly once I started writing. I'm still learning the grammar.
The nice thing about it is that most books struggle, like movies, struggle to have a great story. They have great people that can write a formula. In our world, as authors, we have editors that seems to bring out the very best out of us. But the question is, writing is a process, a lonely process. It takes time. How do you set aside the time, or how do you manage the time to write? And how long did it take you to write this book?
I've probably been writing this story maybe 2 years, I think. But how do you set the time to write? It's weird. I am a multitasker. I think that's one of the things about teaching. When you have 6 students clamoring for attention, you have learned to multitask. And I just have my laptop with me when I sit down to watch TV, and I don't really pay attention, and I will just bang out a couple sentences. That's one of the things I say to myself, just get a sentence out and get it down on paper or on the computer. And even if it's crap, you can always go back and make it better, but you've created something. And The other thing is, from woodworking, I've learned that projects take a long, long time, and they are composed of layers, one layer after another. And you can't create the whole thing in one shot. It just doesn't work that way. But you can lay down a layer and then another layer and another until a project that takes thousands of hours is finally done. So that's my only bit of advice, and that's kind of how I work. I know, Kevin. I know you're a great painter and artist, and you can't sit down and write or draw the entire illustration in an hour. It takes time, and so you just get going. And once you get going, the next one line leads to the next line, and pretty soon it's done. So that's the only thing I can say to people. I have someone in a writers group that I know, they just outline and outline and research and research, and they would not write a single sentence. And I used to say, wow, just get started. It could be terrible, but at least you've done something and move on to the next thing.
Yes, yes. And most writers are stuck at home plate with their first draft. How do you know when you got to the end of the story?
It just feels right. One of the things I did learn writing was that all the books on the shelf more or less stop at 300 pages, 100,000 words. So I just keep that as a benchmark. My first story was like 140 or 50,000 words, and I could have written way more. And I just knew I made it into a part two. There's another, make a trilogy. I made another book coming later, but with the object, I purposefully brought it around. I had a starting point, and I decided to bring them back to the same starting point. So it was kind of a circle. And when we got to that point where the adventure was over, I knew the book was over.
All right, because I know with the books that I write in nonfiction in that genre. And there is a formula that publishers look for because people don't read at the level they did when we grew up. So you're looking at 55,000 words. In the genre of science fiction, what's the formula for that? So for people that want to do what John Previti is doing, is there a formula for that? Word
Yeah.
count, page count?
Yes. I found this out researching myself. It's science fiction stories tend to run long and are accepted to run longer. So they run between 100,000 and 130,000 words, roughly. And then you have to train yourself to aim for that. But my problem is not writing too little. My problem is writing too much. And, I guess it's easier to cut something out if you have it than it is to try and write something if you don't know what to add in.
You're exactly right. Now, do you create a character breakdown for each of your characters, or do you just write as you go along?
I am what they call a pantser, at least up to now, and I just create as I go along. And I'm finding that there are elements of organization that need to be kept, because if you write a story that's too complicated or too long, you can't remember some of the threads. You don't want to tangle your threads of storylines, and so sometimes you have to have a little bit of notes or things like that. One of the hardest things for me is killing a character off. Once you've created a character, it's like a person. You have to actually rein yourself in, not to get too attached or create too much of a character, because if you know you're going to kill them, it's too hard to kill them. It's very difficult to kill off my first character.
Now, is that because you're connected to the character, or
Yes.
okay?
Yes, you've poured your heart and soul into creating a person, and you're like, well, I can't have 8 people traveling through the story. We've got to kill off a few of these people and narrow the story down, because it becomes difficult for the reader to follow, I think, sometimes. And you can always add a new person.
All right. Well, we've got the book done. All right. We've gone through the first draft, which in my genre, I always tell people that your first draft is crap. You know, that's the draft you send out to your friends and your family, and you says, read it, let me know what you think. And sometimes your friends and family don't read it and says, oh, it was so great, I appreciate it. And you always know the people that read it because they will give you some advice. Oh, it was crap, I got lost in this place or whatever. So, you know, what I always teach people is a word dump. I don't know how it works with sci-fi, but once you've got to the point that you've got it all edited and so forth, and you're ready to present it to the world, the next step is the hard part, publishing. Now, there's a stereotype out there. Traditional publishers say that, you know, self-publishing is not a real book. And self-publishers basically say that, you know, the system within this traditional publishers, it's a what is it? It's a dinosaur. It's a machine that's no longer extinct, because one thing is consistent: no matter who you place it with, a book is a book. There's pages with ink on it. It's all black and white, first word to last word. So when you get to the point of you publishing your book, where did you go?
Well, I contacted you, but I mean, before that, I contacted people to talk about the story, to nail the story down. I did it first on story, and then second on grammar and composition, and you know, following all the rules and things like that. But I did get reactions on the story from my writers group, from some people on uh, Fiverr and Reedsy and different things like that. But you know, after a while and numerous rewrites, I felt that the story itself was done and did not need to be changed. But um, I looked for advice on grammar and formatting and all that kind of stuff. All the things that you don't think about when you're writing your story, how to fit it onto a profile algorithm or whatever, so that the various self-publishing platforms will take it. So
What about the cover of your book? How'd you come up with that?
the cover, well, the interesting thing about the cover was that with the object, I had the idea to draw the object, but I sketched it out a little bit and I was like, oh, this is terrible. And on my first novel, I hired an artist and we went around and around because it was a first contact novel with a spaceship in the woods and people, the characters looking at out at the spaceship from the woods. And the artist and I went back and forth many times, and he never was able to actually get the character of the story in his painting. So I was just lucky enough to have somebody that really knocked the ball out of the park with the cover and blending all the different elements of the story together into a cover. And when as soon as I saw it, I was like, "That's what I want."
And
So
what's the artist's name? You got to give him some love too.
John Camacho,
All right.
and he has a site on Instagram also, and we are collaborating on artwork for my next story. And he also wants to create the story as a comic, as an illustrated magazine. So he's been doing that on his own time.
So
Um,
you've
time.
already got ahead of my script. What's the next step? What's the next book? How do we get in touch with you? How do we get the object right now?
Well, we get the object. It's available on Amazon and Kindle right now. And as you say, Audible and also print on demand is coming. I believe will be available through Amazon at first.
All right. Do you have an Instagram account or Facebook?
Uh, at at John Previti on Instagram, and I wish I could tell you right now about Facebook, but I do have a Facebook account, but I have not been led by the hand to show me exactly how to create a wonderful Facebook profile and site, which I am sure is coming from
Well,
uh,
don't feel bad.
feminine sons.
I am trying to master the art of marketing the book through social media, but I'm a firm believer if you write something good, if you get one person to read it and other people share your book, same way Oprah did, that your book will become a bestseller within 6 months. So with that said, I've always asked this question, and because we showcase people that you should know, and just to let you guys know that John Previti is one of our first authors from R&K Productions and Publishing to we helped him produce and publish his book. And as painful as the process is, and I've been through it with traditional publishing, and the reason why I created my own label is because how painful it was to go through traditional publishers. And I wanted to make it simple. John was great. It's not a very speedy process. He put out a great book, which you must read to the end. And I will not tell you the secret to the ending. I can be bought, but just want to tell you, I may lie to you in the process. The Object is a great, great book. And like you said, you have other books coming, so we look forward to that. I always ask this my guest. If you had one ask, ASK, it's just like having a dream to come true. And the reason why I ask this, because when I got started in this space in media and podcasting, people always told me it's about the numbers. You got to get a lot of people to follow you. You got to get people to subscribe to you. You got to do this to manipulate this in order to get the numbers. And I said, I'm going to market my business the same way I've done my business in real life as one of the fitness pros in this business. I'm surrounding myself with genuine people that have a high call to action. The people that follow or subscribe RMK Productions, they're not people that drive by an accident. They stop and help. We've to date had 4 people that have answered the question you're about to answer, John. And someone in our audience, someone that follows or subscribe, I don't know who, well, I know one person, Miss Monique Wells, has made someone's dream come true. So I want you to inhale. I want you to think about it. If you had one ask, ASK, and it could be almost anything, what would that be?
Wow. I tried to thought about it, and I tried to narrow it down to, of course, the writing world. And I would be that if you are a person and you feel that you have a story in you, everyone has a story in you. And those stories are not ordinary. We all feel that we're ordinary to a certain degree, but our experiences are extraordinary because they only happen to one person. And I think you should, if you have a little voice in your head saying, I think I should write this story down, and I think you should try. And of course, once you get started, I write extraordinary things happen to ordinary people. That's how what I enjoy about science fiction, but it doesn't have to be that. It's just write down your story, what experience that happened to you that you think others might benefit from, and just dive in and try and get your story out there. Of course, there's different venues. You don't have to write it, but you can talk it. You can go on Instagram and tell your story. I'm sure people will be very happy to hear your story.
And is that your ask? Is that your one?
That's my ask.
Okay, because I wasn't following exactly what you were saying.
Well, this is that people, if you have a story in your head, I ask that you do not ignore your story. whatever it might be. And I don't have any ask to meet anyone or have dinner with anyone like that. I just want people to um, feel that they are not ordinary, that you are extraordinary, and you should try and get your story out to people,
And
whatever it is you want to tell people.
that was very beautiful and well put. I was prompting you to be a little bit more direct, and I like the way you put it. That was a very selfless ask, to ask people if they have a story to tell, to go ahead and tell their story, because everyone has a story that needs to be told. That was beautiful, and that's why you're a good human being. How do we get your book, John?
Book is available on Amazon and Kindle right now, and it will be available on other venues very soon.
And the title of your book?
The Object.
All right, The Object. So people, I want you to run off in droves, and I want you either download, purchase the book on Amazon.com, buy the book by John Previti, The Object. We have covered so much information, and hopefully we've inspired you to go ahead and put pen to paper or to hit the strokes on the keypad to start beginning writing your story. Every book starts the same way every other author has started. It's the first sentence and it ends with the last sentence. This episode, I hope, has enlightened you. Not only has it enlightened you, it has encouraged you to tell your story. And if there's something that we've said or John has said that has encouraged you, has given you the power to go ahead and tell your story, then I'm asking you to do so. If you like what you've heard, or you'd like to be a guest, go to RMK Productions at, wait a minute, let me go back. Go RMK Productions at info at, wait a minute, let me back up. Info at rmkproductions.org. And you can go ahead and send your information into us, and we will contact you. I'll repeat that, info at rmkproductions.org. If you like what you've heard and would like to see more episodes and John's episode on YouTube and other medias that carry podcasts, go to RMK Productions and Network on our YouTube page. My grandfather always told me, when you get to a place you can help someone else, he says it's your duty to do so. Reach one, teach one. And with that said, if you're an author, reach out for us. If you want to write a book and you want a publisher, RMK Publishing will be there for you. We got 7 in queue right now. And like I said, tell your story, because everyone has a story to be told. And with that said, we are out, and we'll fade to black. Good night, everyone.